Okay, it is time to review Monday, the 3rd of August. I know we still have 30 minutes of trading left, but I mean, I really think it's mostly just going sideways. I don't think that there might be something here, but I doubt it, and I just want to get this done now because this is maybe not the most important one yet, but it is a very important one. I mean, I'm still so new to this that I'm like discovering new things, and it's a little overwhelming, but here we are. Okay, so what happened? Anyways, what were we looking for? Okay, obviously we gapped up. Overnight went sideways. Let me just go ahead and bar replay real quick. Okay. Overnight went sideways. I marked out the overnight high, overnight low. I wrote down in my plan. I expected to take both the overnight high and low, and then I expected to react to the D1 supply, and I'm expecting it to close lower. But then, right before the open, I wrote down, I have a weird feeling that the D1 supply is shit, and we just moon. Interesting, interesting. Okay. So what actually happened? We traded lower. It started at 925, so it was a little bit before the open, but I would honestly, the way that I'd see it, this is part of the open, right? Okay, it started a little bit before the open, that's okay, but this is part of the open, the way I see it. So I see this is the aggressive move lower, this is the aggressive move higher, right? And after we've seen that, we're free to clear. We're cleared to trade. The aggressive move lower took out overnight lows, made a new low for the week. Did not fill in the gap, but and it went higher, and then it started stalling higher, and it starts putting in low, higher low, higher low. And so the way I see this is that we tried to push lower. Low prices got absolutely rejected, hard rejected. Higher prices are being accepted. This is not nuking off. Oftentimes during the open, after an aggressive move up, if there's a lot of strong sellers, it's gonna do that. But it doesn't. It starts putting in higher lows. And so I go, you know what? I was right on my read. I think this is gonna moon. I think it's gonna fucking moon. But I didn't take the trade because I wrote down in my plan I think it's gonna go lower. Okay, so why did I think that? And this is the important part. This is the really important part. I thought that because there's an up close candle here, and then there's a down move here, and it closes through this swing low, and the price kind of goes away. So I thought, hey, this is a supply zone. This is a supply zone. It's not the best one, but it's a daily supply zone, right? Now, I think that I have been quite imprecise with how I draw support and resistance levels. I've been just sort of winging it. And that's fine on the 1 minute because you just don't have very much precision. But it doesn't seem to work too well on when I'm actually trying to use those support and resistance levels to like have an opinion on the market. Obviously, for example, if you're looking to enter here, you could long here. Uh, you could long here, or you could long here on the breakout, you could long here on the retest, you could long on the candle body. Like, you can long whenever or wherever, right? You could use the volume profile. You could be like, you could do this. You could do this. Look, volume profile says, let's use the volume profile from when the aggressive move started. What does the volume profile say? Oh, the volume profile says here was a large pickup in volume. That's where you want to enter. You could do that, and then boom, wow, great, fantastic, right? So when you're on the 1 minute, it's not that important, right? It's more about sort of, oh, I want to buy here, or I want to sell here, or something like that. But if I'm using this to make a bias, then I better understand why I'm drawing the levels that I'm drawing. And so now that I'm looking at this, and I think the thing that I realized when I wrote down my expectations, I think it's gonna moon and ignore the supply. What I'm realizing is that this is a shit zone, right? Technically, it's an up close candle before a down move. But like, we already come up into this candle, which is part of the up close, by the way. And now we're here again, and it's trading aggressively into it after having already tested it. Not only that, but it's not very good because like, if you have a strong supply zone, you kind of want to see it do that, right? You want to see it be sharply rejected. What we have here is we have this. it's just like it's not being rejected as hard. See how many candles we have here? It's just not that clean, it's not that clear, and frankly, I think it's so bad that I wouldn't even have it on the chart. Okay, so that's one thing. I made a mistake. I drew a level just on autopilot because I wasn't really thinking. And now, the way I see it now, and the way that I saw it intuitively when I wrote down my expectations for the day, the way that I see it intuitively, it's a shit level. And I think it's actually completely realistic to expect, well, what happened, right? Which is that we broke it and we traded into the swing high. But I also want to now clarify how I draw levels. So previously I've been 50-50, just randomly either using the body or the wick. Just literally just based on my vibes. And now I'm going to clarify that I officially am going to use the body always. So for example, this breaker here, that's the big one, that's the small one. From now on, I'm just going to use the bodies. And so part of this is because I want my levels to be more precise. I want them to be smaller. And part of it is I want to have fewer levels. And so I'm going to think more about how big is the move away. Was it a nice sort of compression? Was it a small body candle before? Like for example, like look at this. Like this sucks. Whether you use the body or the whole thing, it sucks. It's massive. It's huge. And so I'm going to be more precise. From now on, I'm going to use bodies. So for example, this is a range, obviously. Wow, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Yeah, who would have thought? But I'm going to define the range high as this. See this up close before massive down move, which retested, 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 retested. That's the resistance. But it's been retested so many times that I think it's totally fine to trade past it. But if you want to, you can also go on the hourly. And you can see, hey, look, like here was the market open. Are there any good resistances here? Well, not really. Not really. You could argue that this is a decent resistance. But I don't think it's that good. It's so far away. First of all, it's far away, right? If we just full screen, like we barely see it. And it also wasn't that clear. Like it's mostly just chop, 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 and then the market kind of goes lower. But it's not really like an obvious sort of like what I want to see is I want to see that sort of higher and then instantly lower, and then that's obvious. You know what I mean? This is just not that clear, and so I think it's fair based on the structure. Low, higher, low, higher, low, higher, low, gap higher. Look at the M1. The M1 looked super bullish, super strong. I think it's fair to say, you know what, guys, we're gonna long, and we're gonna hold it for the next daily swing high because there's no other target. There's no other target. There's no target from the hourly, and so I think the next target on the daily makes sense, and that's sort of the logical explanation for why my intuition said, hey guys, this is gonna moon, actually. Even though you wrote down it's gonna go lower in your plan, I changed my mind right before the open. You know what, it's gonna moon. And so now we understand why I felt that way. And you can also do sort of you can just use your eyes, right? You can do like a eye test where if you just draw out some of the best support and resistance levels and you just see like did this work better if you use the wicks or if you use the bodies? If you just draw it out, you can kind of come to the conclusion yourself that, hey, the bodies seem to work pretty good, right? And so there's this sort of, the argument for using wicks is, hey, the zone is bigger, price is more likely to hit the zone. And that's true, but it really seems to me, just from looking at it on the daily and on the hourly for like an hour, it really seems to me like if you just draw the body, the vast majority of the time, like legit like 95% of the time at least, it still ends up hitting. And when you have a smaller zone, it makes it so much cleaner and it makes it so much more precise. So I really think that that is the way to go. And you know, this was something that I had to clarify, right? This was something that I had to clarify because I didn't know about this from before. I was just doing either one at random based on what I felt like, which is not a very good strategy. So yeah, is my sort of, I mean, these are very minor adjustments, of course. I still trade the same way, I still use the same time frames, I still have everything else the same, but I just wanted to clarify this now, that hey, I actually, look at this, if you use the 1 minute here, like okay, clean, nice, we hit the support. But look at this one, because this is actually like a pretty good support level, in my opinion. You know, this tiny candle before a huge move. See how clean it is if you use the body. I think that there's something to it. I think there's something to it. Obviously, that's just me. I'm just nitpicking, but or not nitpicking, cherry picking. But still, I think that this is the way to go, and I think that this is going to help me, because especially on the daily, like here's the problem. Look at this. Okay, so if I use this zone, it literally takes up the entire day, right? Like even if I was to, let's say, compress it into this, yeah, it's still huge, but it's not as bad, right? And I still think it's a bad zone. If I think it's full on a bad zone, I would not trade it. But you know, get rid of those. So I mean, we could do a little bit more of an exercise here, where we could just look for more zones. You know, we could just mark out more zones, and we could be like, oh look, like see here, this actually did react off of the wick, but not off of the body. But then when it comes back into the body, then you get an even higher high, right? So that's the real reaction off of the body and not off of the wick. Of course, you could have still traded this, you know, like if you look here on, let's look at the 2nd of July on the hourly. Okay, it's near the close, so maybe you wouldn't have gotten an entry, maybe you wouldn't even have traded it, but yeah. Same thing here, you know, reacting off of the body. Okay. So I basically just wanted to really clarify this to the point now that it is just absolutely obvious how I'm doing this. I mean, here's an example where, see, it did react off of the wick, not the body, right? Right, didn't hit the body. But to be fair, I mean, this is, again, this is cherry picking, and this is sort of hindsight. But if you look at the actual level, it's coming from here, right? This is the level. And then you can cherry pick again. You can be like, okay, well, actually, this reaction here was only from the wick. See, the reaction was only from the wick. The reaction was not from the body. So, you know, you can always obviously argue. You can argue all day long. But I think that bodies are going to be superior, and so I'm just going to declare now, just so it's objective, and so that it's public, and so that, you know, it's just clear, so that I have less mental overhead. I'm going to use the bodies, but obviously you can do this many different ways. And now I'm just finding more examples where it's like, this day kind of just sucked anyway, so I mean, I would have wanted a run of this low. Yeah, but here it hit the wick and not the body, but that's okay. That's okay, that's okay. Okay, so that's that. For some reason, I'm getting like a little bit egotistical about this now, where it's like I want to find more examples that support the way I do things, but it's like that's not the point, you know, that's not the point. I just want to know what I'm doing objectively. And see, here's the thing is, obviously, even if, like, let's say I'm looking at this on the hourly, and like, I mean, fuck it, let's do this exact example. Okay, so here's your demand zone, right? And here's your SR, which it didn't hit. If we go look at the 1 minute here, it's kind of interesting. I wonder if you could have even used this little thing. Kind of, yeah, interesting. Anyways, let's go look at the 1 minute. Let's see what happens here. The market opens here at 9:30. And it trades lower fairly aggressively, not really like a massive move, but it trades lower, then it's kind of chopping. Not really interested, then it trades higher. Once it's traded higher at 9, it does hit see, it hits the it hits the wick, or not the wick, the body. This is an advantage of using bodies as well, as you can, like, this is not really a breaker, it's not really like a setup in that sense, but just the fact that uh, that you have these moves on the wick, or you have these moves. If you just look at the body, you kind of have clear structure. You can use the body, even though it technically, like, this is not a supply zone, this is not a breaker. I mean, you could argue it's a breaker, but meh. But like, you can still use it as a level, right? So basically, here's the thing. Here, 15 minutes into this video comes the important part. I'm moving away from talking about supply and demand zones, and I'm just gonna call it support and resistance, because that's what it fucking is. Support and resistance is like that's what it is about. Supply and demand zone is literally just a fancy way of saying support and resistance, because it's just fucking support and resistance. Okay. Alright. So we trade up into this, trade up into it, start failing, go lower, retest. You could actually unironically enter there and target like the gap fill here. Eventually we come lower, we go higher, we don't get an entry. This day kind of sucked. Don't love this day. Yeah. Oops, no alert. Kind of funny how it hit that level as well. Boom. You get the instant retest, you get the long retest. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, this is an example of when it doesn't work, but it's kind of like, that's okay, you know. Okay, whatever. This was a really fucking long-winded way of saying that I'm using Wix now only for this sort of high and low setups. So you have your reversals and your spikes and your traps and stuff like that. And then I'm using bodies for support and resistance. And it's support and resistance. It's not fucking, I'm not gonna call it a breaker. I'm not gonna call it a demand zone. I'm not gonna call it a supply zone. I'm not gonna call it an order block. I'm not gonna call it a POI. I'm not gonna call it an institutional candle. I'm not gonna call it what the fuck else could you possibly call it? I've heard probably like 5 more terms at least. I'm not gonna say that. I'm just gonna say support and resistance, because that's what it is. Like, basically I trade support and resistance. That's basically what I do. I mean, I trade like market structure, I would say, almost. Market structure precedes support and resistance, because if you have bullish structure, you're expecting resistances to fail. But secondarily, I trade support and resistance. Like, that's what I do. This is what I do, guys. So